Hi, everybody. Welcome to April's A Business Worth Living webinar. This month, we are chatting all things people, and we've got the brilliant and beautiful Jo Palmer here with us today from Pointer Remote. Very excited to have you, Jo. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Yaz. That's a very kind introduction.
Oh, look, it's the least I can do. Jo, I wanted to start today by asking you what your values are.
My values. Well, my values, I feel that these, it's actually, I conveniently have got my big mega.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
Here's my big mega 2020 book. I'm a big believer in that your personal values have literally got to cross over with your business values as far as being able to function as a human in business. Here's my values page.
So I love that. That is the best.
So this I was actually supposed to have our offsite with our team at the end of last year, and at late notice, no one else could come. So I just went on the offsite by myself and took my Post-its and my texters and all the things. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to do it every year now by myself. I'll still do stuff with my team as well, but it was unreal. But this was one of the things that I wanted to really, I did this in December 2020, and I really wanted to drill down into what our values were. And I think that my business values, which are here, and I'll sort of go through them, they really pretty much reflect on, like I said, with what my personal ones are. And it's interesting that we haven't sort of kept this as a solid thing either. So this one that I showed you is sort of my brain dumpage that I did when I was doing my planning, but we've sort of tightened up the values over the last 6 months as well, with just the things that the 4 months that we've been talking about and things. So I've got here as my first sort of business value is providing a first-class experience. And while that sounds like we are an airline, I think that's been something that's been really a really important thing for us. And actually, I should go back a step. We actually, excuse me, in our weekly team meetings, we actually have a set thing in our agenda, which is we all have to have put into the agenda prior to the meeting of one of the values that we've displayed that week.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, well, what I found was, because it's 12 months prior, we'd done the values and things, and it went into some document elsewhere, and then we didn't really actually look at it. And I guess you were doing things, but this has really made it to the front and center and forefront. And so even if you feel like you haven't met one of the values, you need to madly think of a way to display that value before our meeting.
That's right. So that's a good way to get it done, though. I love it.
100%. I'm all about cramming. It doesn't matter when in the week it happens. So yeah, providing a first-class experience. So trying to make any interactions that people have with our business to be of a premium level, of be something. So that might be through our website, or it might be through the chat, or through our social media channels, or through a phone call or email, or if we're presenting a workshop or training or those sorts of things, to be able to say that we have delivered the best that what we can do. And that's been really, really important. We've actually found that that's been interesting, in that first class experiences mean that we've actually had to adapt to change as well. So that's been an interesting one for us. Another one is nothing less than an engaged, vibrant community. And so again, looking at how we can be engaging with our community, being our customers, our stakeholders, our social media following, our newsletter readers, and all of those sorts of things. One that I really like, and that very much translates from my personal life into it, is that every idea warrants exploration. So that's we have a online, we use Trello for a lot of our internal communications, and we have a list on Trello that is for big ideas or small ideas or any ideas that pop into any of our heads. And again, we allocate time, not on a weekly basis, but more on a monthly thing where we can have a look at those. And so this really prompts big picture thinking and thinking outside the box and stuff, which is really important.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. Demonstrating an optimal remote culture. So obviously we at Pointer Remote are in the remote workspace. And so what we have as one of our company values is to really demonstrate how to do it well and how to do it properly. And so it was quite cute, actually. Caitlin, who works for me, had been on leave for 2 weeks and my world nearly fell apart. But anyway, I sent her a bunch of flowers and I then got on to LinkedIn the next day or whatever, and she had put a post on there that was really interesting, that she'd said, okay, receiving flowers is nothing particularly out of the ordinary, but this, one of our core values is demonstrating that optimal remote culture. And I am or she said something along the lines of feeling very loved, even though I can't see my boss in the flesh, like that she thought outside the box. So anyway, that was like the flowers. I don't do that regularly either. So anyway, but
it's a good pat on the back, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, but like even just being able to say, like, so that we have a completely remote team. Like I work from either the farm or a co-working space. I'm in a co-working space in Wagga today. We have systems and processes in place to make us a remote, being able to live and breathe it, to be able to sell it, the concept to people.
Absolutely.
Really
yeah.
Another one of our values. Sorry, I'm taking a long time.
It's okay. We love it.
I have so much information here.
So, you're well prepared. I didn't know how prepared you'd be for this question. I love it.
Well, I'm very much cheating. Like literally, well, this I keep actually on the desk, and I look back through it like relatively regularly, and like it's actually, I haven't done this before, and I've just discovered how much I like different colored textures and writing.
It's very flash, very flash.
So I find because it's pretty, I also like looking at it more regularly.
For sure. That always helps.
So another one of our values is eyes up. And so having that concept of being open to opportunity and thinking, I think the word leverage always comes with such like sometimes cringy connotations, and leverage makes it sound almost sinister. But I think we really talk about like how you have your eyes up, like it might be that you're at something and you meet someone that could actually be an opportunity. Just having your eyes up.
Yeah, I like that
sort of thing. And also like thinking about when you're meeting people, like how, if your immediate reaction to meeting someone, and this is something I try and do personally, is like, how can I help? Like, how can I in some way assist you in whatever it is?
Yeah.
Can I take kids to swimming lessons for you? Or can I do this? If we do that in the business as well, opportunities always arise as well, which is really cool. And then our last one is integrity and values cohesion. So are we actually living our values? And I think that us incorporating the values part into our weekly meetings has been really helpful. And how are we demonstrating integrity? So replying to emails, doing what we say we're going to do, and all of those things. And sometimes, especially in small business, like that you have all good intentions of doing that, but it can sometimes fall by the wayside. So trying to actually put that front of mind and be something that you do regularly, I think is really important.
Yeah, and I mean, keeping the book on the desk, if that's the way to get it done, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing those. That's perfect. I mean, everybody who's ever sort of hung out with us before knows we're a little bit obsessed with values, and, you know, I think that's one of the most important bases of all. Is that even a word, bases? But it is now.
Plural of basis.
It's the most important basis of business, really. So that's why I wanted to start with that today. So thank you very much for that. And Jo, I mean, if I didn't already know you were the perfect person to talk about people, after that, I definitely know you are, because pretty much all of those values fed into people, whether it's your clients or your staff or how you interact with people. So perfect. Let's dive into the topic of the day. Jo, tell us about yourself and who you are, what you do, what brought you here today.
Well, I just feel like I dived straight into very intimate personal details there.
That's what we like. That's what we like. No small talk around here.
Well, I'm based on a farm about half an hour south of Wagga in southern New South Wales, and I run a company called Pointer Remote. So we work with communities, businesses, and individuals to leverage, not the dirty word, leverage remote work. And we have a really strong purpose, I suppose, purpose and values, I guess, around how rural communities can really take advantage of remote work and what that means to not only retain the populations that they've already got there, but also to attract new populations. So we have a recruitment platform, like a big jobs board that you can advertise jobs if it doesn't matter where the person filling the job lives. And we also run programs. Our program, we've recently renamed it to Doing Work Differently. So we do capacity building programs around remote work. So we work with individuals who are either already working remotely and are wanting to get better at it, or for people that are looking to engage with the workforce remotely. To be honest, even if you work in an office or for someone else, like the stuff that we talk about is like completely transferable to work. And then we also do similar things with businesses. So if they're looking to transition to even a hybrid model of letting people work from home more regularly and structured, being able to manage people remotely, building and maintaining company culture when you've got people that are in and out of the office or not in the office at all. Those are the sorts of things that we work with to really help businesses not only find and attract skills that they need in their business to grow, but also how to like really run an effective business when you've got people working in a flexible way to actually hold on to them so that you don't have to come back and use us again to hire people.
That's right. How good. And what, like, has the last year for you with COVID and everything been, has it blown up a bit? Like, what's the sort of, how's that been for you?
I think most people, just their automatic response to 2020 is like crazy or bonkers or nuts or all of the above. For us, it was all of the above, but really quite challenging because everyone's initial reaction was like, oh my God, like, look at you guys. This is, the world has come to the table and it's
just
like
knocking at your door.
100%. But what we found was really quite challenging with the business itself, because most of our income came through people advertising jobs. Everyone pulled in the purse strings. Like, everyone freaked out. They were like, I don't even know how I'm going to hold on to my current staff, let alone find new people. And so cash flow for us pretty much dried up, which was quite challenging. All of our events got cancelled. All of my speaking gigs got cancelled. So it was pretty hairy for a while there. We then sort of, we actually then picked up some work with organisations that were like, oh my God, like, we are panicking. We have never done any of this flexibility stuff before. We're freaking out, like, help. And so that's when we sort of started picking things up again. And then when confidence came back in and when people sort of realised, like, okay, Australia's doing pretty well in this, or they were finding new opportunities themselves and the businesses were growing, they then started advertising jobs again. And as obviously things have loosened up, we've been able to get back out on the road again. As with everyone, we're delivering things very differently. Like, we used to, it seemed quite counterintuitive, and it wasn't lost on me, the fact that we were running physical workshops on remote work. But I've also had the pleasure of deleting probably the first half an hour of slides and presentations and things when I run a course, because I don't have to explain what remote work is anymore.
Yeah, so true.
I don't have to give demos on Zoom. I don't have to I don't have to explain a lot of the terminology that we were using that people were like, I don't know what that means. Like, and that confusion that we always faced in Australia, even with the terminology, like working remotely. Pre-COVID, a lot of people still defaulted to thinking that you were either working in a remote Indigenous community or you were on a mine site or you were things. So even just the terminology around that's been a really interesting change. So tumultuous is probably a good word to
Tumultuous.
describe.
Good word, but coming out the other side, certainly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that what people are now realizing, and I think that with any crisis, lots of experts appear. And I think that that's another reason that we've really tried to hone in on like our vision and our purpose and those sorts of things, because I really want to see rural communities to be able to like leverage this, to be able to be like, okay, how can we use remote work to attract a GP to our town? And people are like, no, you can't do that. But you can, when in the past, a lot of the reasons that a GP wouldn't relocate to a rural area was because of their trailing spouse and the partner saying, well, what am I going to do if we move to Western Queensland? Where now we're in this new world where quite often those spouses can be like, okay, let's do this. Like, let's move, let's relocate, let's go to the country, let's do this. And I'll take my job with us.
Yeah.
So that's where I feel that we have a really big role to play, and where I think that we've built the sort of the respect and the reputation and things with, and it's just that we're a lot more explicit about it now. We sort of had to be a bit more general in the past with our like, just with our sell really, because we were like, okay, like anyone can do this, any business can do this, any individual can do this. Whereas then I think people were like, oh yeah, she's saying anyone, but I don't know if it's actually me. They're like, oh, okay, I get it. She is rural. She deals with rural businesses. She deals with rural people. Like, while we're still more than happy to work with big organizations, like we're this close to signing on one of the big 4 accounting firms to do their recruitment through us, which is really, really exciting.
Amazing.
Yeah, but like, again, the opportunities that has for rural people, because we've got that platform and that we're already on their radar. Yeah,
that's so cool, Jo. Well, that leads in perfectly to my next question. Let's dive into obviously the point of this topic even more, which is people. What do you think makes a great team?
I think communication. If you have to pick one thing, I think that regardless of how you're running your organization, like, so obviously I have to default back to whether you're doing that in an office, if you've got people that are in the office all the time, or they're in there 3 days a week and they work from home the other days, or if you've got people that are never in the office, regardless of where people are physically working, if your communication isn't up to scratch, then things unravel either before your eyes, or you don't realize they're unraveling. And I think that they're two very different things. So there's the things that you're aware of and you can see sort of falling by the wayside, or, oh, I should nip that in the bud. But then there's all this stuff that you don't realize that's happening. So people feeling isolated, people feeling left out of things, people not having access to all the information that they need to be able to do their job autonomously, or they're not having the support that they need to upskill and grow. So I think communication and being really explicit about how you communicate in your organization is genuinely vital. And I think that if I had to pick something, like, that would be what I would choose.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something you actually actively have to plan and think about. And even, well, I was going to say even more so if you've got people that are working flexibly, but you know what? That should be a blanket rule to how you run your business regardless. Like, you need to be able to articulate what you want, and whether you're the business owner or whether you're the employees, you need to be able to articulate, and there needs to be channels for you to be able to say what you need to be able to do your best work.
Absolutely. So communication, huge, obviously. What would be 2 or 3 things that business owners could implement today, tomorrow, super simple things that they could implement to be able to communicate better or open up those channels a little bit more within their team?
So as like woo-woo as it sounds, have a communication charter or a one-pager that is explicitly stating how you communicate in your company. And again, that doesn't matter if you're all in the office or whatever. Like, you can have things in there like, these are our regular meetings. This is when I'm available as a manager. nuanced things for someone new coming in, that if my door is physically open, it means come in. If the door is shut, do not knock on it. Like things like that. Don't assume people know, and don't assume people will just pick it up by osmosis, even more so when you've got people that are working remotely.
Assumptions are probably the most detrimental thing, aren't they, when it comes to communication? Far out.
Just for life in general.
Just for life. Basically. Yeah, for life in general. So that's one awesome thing. Do a bit of a charter of communication up. What's something else? You alluded to it a little bit within your values, even like regular meetings.
Yeah, definitely. So I was just going to say, I will share with you a copy of our communication charter that I'm more than happy for people to copy and paste pieces. Go for it, because I think it's often easier once you've got something to start with to get the gist.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yes, being really clear about how and when you communicate. So I think, again, this is a thing, and it depends on what you do, how often you can physically see each other, what your setup is. You might have a lot of part-timers working for you, and aligning meetings is really challenging. I get that. But again, trying to find time and make the weeks work in some way where you are communicating on a semi-regular basis, where everyone who needs to be in that meeting is in that meeting. And that meeting can be a 10-minute Zoom on a Monday morning. And that means that even your part-timers, not that I encourage you to get people to work when they're not working, but maybe half an hour off their Thursday is like they finish half an hour earlier on a Thursday just to get that Monday morning thing. And you know that they've got to do kids drop off. So why don't you make it for 9:15 on Zoom that they can do in the car out the front of school, or something like that, where everyone's got a touch point, I think is really important. And again, it doesn't have to be the whole organization. It might be teams with managers or things. And I understand the part-time thing is actually really challenging. And so that would be something. So regular meetings, and I know everyone's a bit sort of like, ugh, death by meetings, but if those meetings, don't ever have meetings that aren't agended. If you get invited to a meeting that is already set up as a recurring one, sort of push back and say, do I actually need to be at this meeting, or does this meeting need to exist, or can it be an email?
Is it an email? Yeah, I love those ones.
Yeah. And so having a think about that, but I think being really purposeful around, I know that it's in the remote world, people talk a lot about having that offsite, that physically getting together thing, which I think is absolutely vital. But I think that that's really important for people in an office environment as well. Going somewhere else, and even if it's to the library, like meeting in your town, the park, you're right, going somewhere else, I think is really important, and to get people together, I think is really important.
Definitely. Yeah, couldn't agree more. About halfway through last year, when we were all sort of scattered around everywhere, we started to implement, literally, sometimes it was 5 minutes, sometimes it was half an hour, 3 mornings a week at 9:30 in the morning. We'd all jump on Zoom, just have a bit of a, what are you doing today? What do you need support with? What can I do for you? Just have a bit of a chat and then leave again. Just those really quick sort of 5 to 30-minute meetings that just touching base made us all feel so much more aware of what was going on, more comfortable with what we were doing. We could ask for support or any quick questions. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a really, really good one.
Well, as well, and I think that it creates those opportunities to also catch up where you want, like, so in a flexible sort of workplace, that you quite often, you don't get those lunchtime hangs or the incidentals, so you can create those
chats and
100%. And you have to actively do that, and this is what I'm talking about, like how you communicate in your company. You need to actively be creating that environment. So for example, like our weekly meeting, we have it on a Thursday afternoon, which is a bit random, but again, I've got part-timers and I have school hours to work around and things like that. And so what we actually have our recurring meeting that sits in the calendar for 2 o'clock on a Thursday. But before that, there is, like, at 11 o'clock in the morning, there is a recurring thing in our calendars to remind you to go into the agenda and put in any things that need to be discussed.
Yeah.
For our agenda, we actually have a Google Doc that, again, the link lives in the calendar, recurring calendar thing. And we have a template for the agenda, just lives in there, and we copy and paste it. One of the girls, it's her job each week to make sure that there's a fresh one in there before 11 o'clock on a Thursday so that we can fill it in. And so it actually then means that we have this one big document that you can actually at any time flick back through previous week's agendas to find things that we might have needed to catch up on or whatever, and it keeps everything centralized. But we actually start the meeting with, again, this is what you have to have pre-prepared before the meeting, is there's literally a little table in there with all of our names, and it asks about how your headspace is. So you put a sentence or two in there, feeling great, got all these great leads come in this week, or blah, blah, blah. Or do you know what? The kids have been sick this week and I'm hating on life. Like, I'm just feeling really flat. And even that writing it in is a bit cathartic as far as how you might be feeling, but it also gives everyone a bit of a gauge on how you're feeling, but it also might then prompt some follow-up stuff just off the meeting as well, that people can then get in touch or touch base or those sorts of things. So that's something that we've found a really beneficial thing of adding into the meeting. So that's there. How you've displayed a value is in there as well. And then we've tried to, like, we set times, and each of the sections have got time allocated for it so that it doesn't become this like laborious thing. And it also means if you can't make that meeting, you can stick in your bits still, and then you can come back and have a look at it.
Brilliant.
As well.
Jo, would you be happy to share that template with us too?
Sure.
I think that would be amazing for everybody. To obviously just take all your bits out and just leave the headings in. I think that would be really cool. I did just want to circle back to something you said. So you mentioned about the part-timers, and obviously, that can be really tricky trying to fit in with everybody's schedule and the life. And you mentioned having potentially scheduling a meeting, so people can just jump on for 10 minutes on the way home from school drop off. How important do you think sort of being really intentional and tailoring your business activities around the people in your business is for company culture?
It's paramount. And I think that I can't do anything without my team. This falls in a massive heap without them. Like I said, like with one of my team going on leave for 2 weeks, and my world nearly imploded on itself. But if you're not putting them first and making them feel valued and things, like, how do you get motivated to go to work if you think your boss doesn't particularly appreciate you, or that you're constantly being bent or having to flex to fit around the boss? Like, for me, I chose to go into business. This is my bag. Like, I decided that I wanted to do this, and because I have to do the big hours to get the things done, that my expectation is never around them to do the same thing. So I think what I had wanted to do when I started the business was that I wanted to, and I know a lot of people say this, but I wanted to make something that I loved going to work, and I wanted it to be like that for my team. And so things change, and we have to be flexible, and we've been flexible generally. Every time someone new starts with us, we have to reset things pretty much. Like, so whatever, we don't have a sort of set and forget sort of setup. Like, our Thursday meetings have only been on Thursday since one of our girls has come back from maternity leave part-time, and it just doesn't work at other times of the week. So and for me to be able to, I've got 1 more year until my baby starts primary school, and so I've had to try and see what I can make a week look like that is in school hours and not working on Fridays, because she's at home from daycare those days. And so for me to demonstrate that flexibility then gives them permission to be like, because the expectations for them to do a 9 to 5 are not there from me, because I'm not even doing it myself. So I think, and they're very aware of that. And when they start, I'm very clear that this is how we do things here. And
so setting up having really clear expectations around what is and isn't expected of
Yeah,
you.
it's
Like
just
that's
100%.
it's back to
Communication.
communication. Yeah,
100%,
that's it.
100%. And so the girls know. So we had one of our girls, one of her kids was really unwell, like flying doctors to Sydney, the whole shebang, a couple of weeks ago. And she literally was she messaged me and she's like, I'm out. I'll let you know when I'm back in, but I'm out.
Yeah.
And we were able, because our communication is set up that anything that were unfinished tasks or whatever, we have that all in the cloud. We were able to see where anything that she hadn't finished could be picked up, redistributed to other people in the team and those sorts of things. Because we're silly if we're running businesses that cannot work around life pretty much, because it happens all the time.
It does. That's right.
A fire happens, floods happen, sick children happen,
COVID happens.
COVID.
Yeah. And I mean, you can be kind of flexible and prepared to just roll with it, or it can be a major meltdown situation. I'd know which one I would prefer.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So I know there would be some businesses out there, whether they've got 2 or 5 or 40 employees, who kind of think that, tailoring everything to their employees, not everything, but tailoring a lot of things and being intentional around these sorts of things is just too hard and too much, especially with those bigger teams. And often that's where you kind of see the company culture is lacking a bit. What would be, your advice to a business owner who does feel like their company culture is not the best, or there's, some bitching internally or whatever it is, people not that motivated to do their jobs. They're kind of like, oh, well, I'll just rock up and do as little as I possibly can. Like, what would be some pretty solid baseline advice to business owners of any size? Or maybe it's not, maybe it's dependent on size. What would that be?
I think about, like, if you read anything about, like, companies that get voted best place to work for and all of those things, I think the recurring theme to those is where the people, the employees, feel heard and feel valued. So don't underestimate when you've got 40 people in your organization or 200 people, a lot of them could be grouped into similar sort of situations as far as their flexibility or needs and those sorts of things. So don't think that it has to be tailored to like an individual sort of thing, because it can be sort of, if you think about it differently like that, you can do things. So possibly giving things like that concept of the employee being felt that they're being seen and heard, is giving them some input into the planning on, again, if you do that communication charter together, like the buy-in that you get from your team, if they're involved in the systems and processes that happen, is huge. So what might end up being is that it's not like throwing it open to things, but say, okay, we're looking to do this. These are the 3 options. What do you think would work best? And it might mean that you actually run the same meeting twice a week, and that you record both of the sessions, and so the people that can't get to either can watch the recorded session on fast forward before the second meeting, like they then can watch the recording or to catch up on things. Again, well-minuted meetings, and it doesn't mean that they have to be like hugely long, but key points that are recorded and action items being recorded. A lot of the time you can get away with people not having to be there. I think that if it doesn't come naturally for you to think about that communicating on a small group or a one-on-one thing with your team, don't beat yourself up, especially if you're the business owner. Quite often you're in this thing. So cheat, like do things like put a recurring event in your calendar that, say if you've got a team of 15 people, that every 3rd day or every day, if you wanted to, it says text so-and-so or text or email so-and-so or call a meeting with this crew, and just remind yourself little prompts to even just chuck something in the group chat thing, like how was everyone's weekend, or oh, okay, Yaz, like I have a recurring thing that every 3 weeks it says ring Yaz for an off the and realistically, if you every 3 weeks, they're not going to notice that you do it at 11 o'clock on a Thursday.
No, that's right.
Every 3 weeks, they'll be like, oh wow, Joe's like clockwork. Every third Thursday,
just
she
must think
rings
of me randomly on a Thursday
But-
morning.
Yeah, but those that can be a 5-minute phone call.
Yeah.
Or it could be a text of how's so-and-so, like just those humanizing you as a manager and humanizing them as your team, like the amount of like very minimal work that you can turn around a mediocre feeling culture. But again, you've got to give them buy-in. Like I think that in order to pick up socks, like you've got to be able to cop it and hear the bits they're not liking and then be willing to be like, okay, then how do we fix this? If they're like, okay, so you open it up and say, right, we're going to do this, you're going to give the feedback. But what I really ask is that if you're going to give feedback or that it comes with a suggestion on how we can make it better and don't just open it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because again, people love that. People love giving feedback. God, everyone loves feedback. So especially if it's something that's grinding their gear or a pain point for them in their organization, like it might be that like, okay, I'm really behind in this and you keep asking me to do this, but I don't have all the things that I need to be able to get that task done. And because you've asked me so many times, I now don't want to ask that you haven't given me all the stuff. So to be able to give people the opportunity to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, I haven't got everything I need, but this is a system that I'm thinking that we could put in. Like maybe it's we spend 3 days, and that seems like a huge amount of time, but it'll be 3 days making all of our paper records electronic, and it's just scanning them through and putting them into an electronic drive. And that means that I've got all of the access to the things that I need to be able to get my work done because I can't get into the office or things like that. Obscure suggestion, but you know what I mean? Like,
no, I know what you mean.
People the opportunity to solve the problem that is, because quite often they can't solve the problem because they're on that hamster wheel of trying to get it done. And also they don't feel like they can offer a solution to something. Yeah.
And that's what sort of, it's like a chicken and egg with generating that buy-in, isn't it? Like they kind of need the buy-in to be able to make the suggestions, but they need to have it already to, I think it all really does come down to communication, doesn't it? By the sounds.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is that just also remember just to give credit where credit's due. Don't then own that response or that solution. Like give credit to everyone else. Because again, we are all like puppies just gagging for like
little pat on the head. 100%. Yeah, that's right. Oh, and for sure.
And I don't underestimate how much people like still as adults love that and love a mention in the internal newsletter or love a shout out in a meeting or love a little bunch of flowers arriving. Like, again, you can do things that are really easy, free or very affordable ways to make your team.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's awesome, Jo. So much good value in here. I do have a couple questions from our social media people, audience. I don't know what word I'm looking for there. We put out, obviously, when we were advertising that we were going to chat with you if anybody had any questions around people, HR team, that sort of thing. One of them was, if you could go back in time to when you were hiring staff for the first time, what would you tell yourself or how would you prepare yourself?
Retrospect.
It's a magical thing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. So I think what I would do is actually talk to someone. So this is like me as single business owner with no staff or whatever. I think I probably should have invested in some time, like with either a coach or someone to actually strategically go through and do like an audit of the things that need to actually happen in the business, like the things that need to be done and because I think that what happens so often is that, especially in small business, you don't hire until you are bursting at the seams because that thought of the cost and the responsibility of employing someone, even in a part-time manner, is really daunting and really scary and really hard work. And so we put it off as long as possible, but then we really stuff it up because we're running so ragged.
Yeah.
We haven't got the time to onboard people. We haven't put the systems and processes and things in place. So I think doing like an audit of the skills that you actually need in the business, I think doing like a psychometric test, like a DISC profile or a Myers-Briggs or something, is a really valuable thing to do. One, to get some self-awareness about yourself, but also to start having a think about some of the other skills that you need that you are lacking and that you could actually get in as assistants. So that would be some of the advice. I think, again, having a look at like how you like to communicate and how you do things, being really aware of that and be able to articulate how you think you are going to want to communicate with your team, because then when you make that hire, you can say, this is what I'm thinking. I think we probably need a Monday stand-up every week, that at 9 o'clock we dial in for half an hour and we can do this and this. I think that we probably need this each week and blah, blah, blah. I think the concept of planning out what a perfect week looks like for your employee and then saying, this is what I'm thinking, is this what you're thinking? And again, asking for their feedback, not assuming that what you want them to do is actually going to be where the best use of their skills are. So don't be frightened that once you put someone on, and like one of my team who has been working for us for nearly 2 years is probably a perfect example of that. And I hired her when I was in the hamster wheel of mayhem. And I genuinely was like, I don't have a job description. I don't know what I want you to do. I just need someone. Yeah. And I lucked it. I genuinely lucked it, because this could have ended really badly. Especially because she left another job to come and work for me. So it could have ended up like, and so that is not how I would do things again. And it hasn't been how we've done things since. So I think that, the key things there are around self-awareness and actually really knowing how you work and how you run the show, but also what you need to counter yourself. And then again, being really clear about how you're going to communicate and do things, and how are you going to enable the person to do their best job. Because realistically, majority of people, people say hire for culture and you can teach the rest. I pretty genuinely believe that, like realistically, like unless there's some really specific skills like a heart surgeon has, realistically
probably important.
In small business, a lot of the time, if you let people show you, they've got all these other skills and things that they have and that they could actually be doing in your business that you didn't realize when you hired, or you don't think to advertise for. And Absolutely. So having this sort of mindset when you're hiring will mean that you might get even more bang for your buck with the person that you think. But also on the flip side of that, don't try and hire a unicorn. Like, be realistic. And I hate using examples, and I only said this to a friend who was also looking, that he he's a vet and they do embryo transfer, and so he was looking for an admin assistant who could needle cattle.
That's pretty broad.
100%. And I was like, okay, maybe splitting this into 2 jobs could be more beneficial, because trying to find that unicorn. And of course he emailed me like the next day, he's like, you are not
found someone.
Found a unicorn.
That's awesome.
Found a unicorn, but that is,
they're out there somewhere.
That's not normally the case. And so being realistic with your expectations as well, because you're not a jack of all trades, and so don't assume that you're going to be able to hire someone that's amazing at everything.
Yeah, for sure. I love that you touched on that personality piece as well, because that is huge for, or would you, probably in all size teams actually, I'm sure it would be. I suppose it would be just as valuable with people who are interacting pretty much all day, every day, almost like we are here, as it would be for those teams of 40 plus that sort of have bits and pieces to do with each other. Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's super important.
And that's why I think as well that self-awareness and getting help with your self-awareness. So, okay, me being exhibit A, when I first did my disc profile, I was like absolutely mortified at my results because I had zero self-awareness, that I was like, oh my God, I'm like that. And I literally like rang one of the girls that had been working for me. I was like, oh, I have to apologize for like the last 12 months. And she was like, oh, don't worry, I've been like, I know what you're like, and it's fine. But I was just like, oh my gosh, like I have actually no concept that that's how I did things, and that I am really quick to make decisions, which makes it really challenging for someone that needs to digest things. I'm like, okay, we're doing this, and okay, we're changing direction, and okay, we're changing the tech platform that we're doing this. And I was like slowly driving everyone else mad without realizing it. So I think that's something that has been really good. But also the fact that like in my disc profile, it says that like for people dealing with me, allow more time for meetings, for general chit chat and things like that, which I didn't realize again that I did. And we've been able to then incorporate that in, so that it then makes for a more streamlined meeting. And again, the team can say, okay, Jo, rein it in.
Rein it in. And how hilarious. Like, I know we were chatting before I hit record on this about how you have then been able to make hires within your team that are pretty much the complete opposite personality traits of yourself to balance it out. And I know, like with me and Jules, that's exactly the same. You know, she is the face and she's loud and has all the millions of brilliant and crazy ideas all day, every day, and probably all night as well. And I'm, you know, really happy just typing away behind the scenes and just getting stuff done. But yeah, it's great. And without that understanding of personality types and how people communicate, back to communication, it's just a bit impossible to do, isn't it?
Well, otherwise you just end up hiring yourself
and
over and over. And
you're like, you're fun.
Yeah, and you don't get anything.
Get the boring girl. Get the boring girl.
Yeah.
No.
But again, it creates a really concerning workplace if you just keep hiring carbon copies of yourself. Like you get no diversity of thought or opinions or things. You don't get people that will call you on bad behavior or rein you back in when you're off chasing the shiny things. So really, yeah, it's really important to not just hire your clones.
Absolutely. Well, Jo, we're out of time, but thank you so much. I think that was a super valuable chat. And for anybody watching, we've actually, so this webinar series is obviously part of 11 for the year, and we've got different topics for each month. They're all formed for topics we didn't just sort of pick out of thin air. We've got them as part of our online business health check, which is a free resource that I'm just going to pop in the chat box now. If anybody wants to go and assess where they're at when it comes to people at the moment, you will go through the whole assessment, but people is number 3 on the list. So it'll be great to sort of get that, implement some of the brilliant things that you've learned about today from Jo, and check back in again in 6 to 12 months time and see how you've gone. But Jo, thank you for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. And you're going to share some of those goodies with us and the templates and stuff. So we'll email those out to everybody shortly.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Ez.
Pleasure. I'll talk to you all soon. Have a good afternoon.